Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We are back in the park. We just got back from the zoo. I like checking out the animals. Saw 2 new baby elephants. I'd already seen Rita at the Columbus Zoo here in Ohio, but there's a new one. The unnamed male made an appearance. But you know what we're doing, logical derivation. I'm providing you any empirical evidence about language or just observations, and we're making unique analysis. We've constructed a word, sensorality. It's the general form of censorship, why anything is censored. We've made a difference between things that are sentient, like me choosing to go or not say a swear word around my parents. That's censorship with an S. And if I drop a quarter into a slot machine and it knows it's a quarter, that's censorship with a C. So when people spell censorship with a C, it's wrong. And we showed that last episode with the spelling because it cannot contract to is. So we covered that. That was very poignant. Again, hopefully the audio comes out. We are at a public park and there's some heavy duty grass work going on. But the audio has been going pretty good. I do like these little wireless Me Rode headphones or microphones. They work pretty well. So this section right here, and so now what we're doing is we're reducing sensorality. All words iterate, and now we're trying to show the direct iteration in this reduced form of what censorship is, connecting it to another word you already know, and showing its linguistical form. The base word is the same, or directly connected. And so I missed a section that I wrote down yesterday, so we're going to start there. But again, most of the stuff is in order, but there's just more theorems in between each episode. But you don't miss any of the things. Again, once we get to the final form, it will contain all of the logic that we've worked through to get to this point. And so volition is consent, and that's a phrasing typically, right? He did that of his own volition, right? You're talking about consent. You're talking about agency, your ability to choose, your ability to censor. What is the relationship of text and context, right? Text, you'll see it a lot in legal diction, or like, how do you talk about what is handwriting, right? Handwriting forms text. And so we've demonstrated extensively, I want to say extensively, but again, I'm showing you specific examples and it's trivial for you to go find other examples. But, right, text is a base word. Now we have context, right? And we have texture. So what can we say in general that about text specifically, or just in general, where we have this word, right? Context, text is clearly the base, right? Con is a prefix, and then text is the base, and then texture, and text again is the base, and then is the suffix. And so how can we show that, or like what general statements can we make about the iteration, the progression of that base word going from the front of the word to the end of the word? In all generality. But specifically to context and texture, again, clearly they're related by text, but context is everything, your environment, everything that goes into nurture, and texture is like the materiality, like what is something made of produces texture. God, freaking these planes, man. You try to record some science and someone has to fly a freaking plane. But anyway, moving on. Another interesting thing we've gone through extensively, group, category, and set. Set is set, right? But we have the word subset, right? You don't really say subgroup or subcategory. You could say those things, but it's not really articulated. And right, I also say subsection, right? I'm talking about my legal stuff, right? Article 1, Section 8, subsection 8, right? So subsection, subset. What prefixes are applicable to what base words and why? How do we negate certain words, whether we use un or a or anti? What kind of more poignant specific statements can we make about these things that we've demonstrated? But clearly subset is a word, and so again, subset is a group or category that's finite and that is set. But just the point being is there's certain groupings, subsets, but you don't really say subgroup. You could say that, nobody would be confused, but it's like, again, what consistency is being kept or preserved there? But sorality is set, right? Sorality subsets, sensorality subsists, right? If you have sustenance, you're subsisting, right? Life, I need nutrients, I need water, and I need food to sustain life. This chair does not need sustenance. And so All right, and then we get that subsist, subset, subsist. And so again, are these, again, all languages related? And so I'm just showing you the points where I derived the logic from. You might be saying, you know, how did you go from set to subsist? And again, it's really just off of my own intuition, because again, all words are related. And so it's like you can jump from any word to any other word that has the same vowel or the same letter or really anything. But there has to be consistency to it. Because again, remember, you construct a proof. We constructed a word, right? We built a word, sensorality. And it's built on that sense, that same base of sentience, sexuality, common sense, right? And so we're generalizing this whole concept. We're bringing them all together in one big category, one big set, and then we're proving something about the past that will solidify all of this. But sensorality subsists. You need nutrition to survive, or sustenance to survive. And that was the section that I forgot to cover yesterday. Laws produce rights. And so we've pointed out, again, I don't know if you need two, but again, this fundamental stability of two, we're going to, like, again, reduce it where we show the dichotomistic pair of sorality with something else. And again, that will be the part what gives us our new axiom. But rights have not been properly identified as the spelling. I just had a comment on my other one, and it's like, you know, rights for everybody, including non-citizens, which I covered that from a legal standpoint, but from a linguistical standpoint, and nobody says the word rights and spells it correctly. They just don't. They say rights, R-I-G-H-T-S, and that's incorrect. Right is to correctness, right is to the opposite of left. Right as in I have a constitutional right or I have a right of passage is R-I-T-E. And so we're connecting, like we proved the spelling of sensorality. That's what we proved, that it has a consistent spelling within language diction already today. Because again, when you insert that I, that is when you're breaking the generality of language. You're saying me, this person over here, I, Brad. And so, and then we showed that consistency to the spelling of sensorality. So that really was a huge, huge step. But we've also identified other things, like in rights have not been spelled correctly. So we were probably connecting these two things. Again, like I said, I'm at the frontier putting together these pieces and I don't know what I'm solving. Right? I know it's sensorality with a C, sorality through the sensorality in the past, but what it connects to, that's what I can't tell you. And that's what science team knows behind closed doors, which makes it fraudulent torture, but no one cares. Moving on. But we're connecting things that haven't been identified correctly as spelling. Can we generalize that entirely to say this is how you spell all words, or this is the physical basis for, or motivation for spelling? Probably. I don't know what that looks like, but not the point. The point is for this is, like, I think we're connecting to spelling, so that rights had a big thing to do with it. But point being is sensoritality or sensoritality, right? Another one of those forms we haven't talked about in a while because it reduces or something, but it has rights, right? Sensoritality has rights. Things that are sentient have rights. But now again, look at the word sensoritality, right? So we have to break apart each of these words by syllables, prove each step we're doing, and it's like they're all kind of like built on the same thing. And so sensoritality, that ritality, that is the generalized of right. R-I-T-E, generalized is R-I-T-A-L-I-T-Y. So sensoritality is ritality, and it's all their pronunciation. And so we have to work through, like, again, every implication from each of these syllables that goes into sensorality. And so rights is very clearly, like, linguistically and logically, life has rights. Sensoritality has rights. Again, is expanding. Like I said, we're building or identifying the natural definition of sensorality. And then obviously sensorality is built on, again, sensoritality, with it is what it is being this general form of all solutions. And you can clearly see it being, again, I don't know if it's dimension 3 or why that's not the form of the word, why sensorality and not sensoritality. Again, when I constructed that word or proven why that's the next axiom, at this point it's been 5-6 years or whatever, and I don't look at anything I do again. None of it. And so I can't tell you exactly why, but that's the whole point, is we'll get back to it. All of this stuff is centralized. I just don't know what the right question to ask is. That's what logical derivation is. A big old world out there. We just keep asking questions, iterating these words, trying to find this unique sequence of letters. Speciality yaps. He's a yapper, he's yapping. But speciality yaps. Your natural tendency to differentiate for sexual antagonism causes you to speak more. Again, connecting it to another slang thing. Yapping is not yelling. right? If you're just talking a bunch, that doesn't indicate yelling. And then very clearly, intuitively, conceptually, you know they're different, and linguistically, they're very similar, right? We have that double P, the double L, and then the A and the E are the only things that iterate. And so yelling, yellow, yellow, bellow, bellow, below. Sensorality with a C is below speciality. So remember, sensorality is this fundamental filtration aspect of inanimate, non-sentient objects. I'm made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, and that collectively combined gives this dynamic. I can self-identify, I can move. But sensorality with a C is just that filtration of, my heart beating at 70 to 80 beats per minute, and I don't have to think about that. That's sensorality with a C. And so when I say sensorality with a C is below speciality, it's just more basic. You couldn't have a person without electrons, without protons. That's what I mean there logically. So I just always keep what I quote unquote renormalizing, just giving you an empirical fact. So if any of the diction that I say is confusing or you think it's philosophical or high flying, it's not. And so I always just show you, this is what I'm saying, this is what I mean by these words. So sensorality with a C is below speciality, meaning it's more basic, meaning speciality, life, is built upon sensorality with a C. Speciality defines sensorality, right? Life can define inanimate objects. Inanimate objects can't create definitions for living things. Proof is demonstrable, right? So now kind of more general, like what establishes a mathematical proof? Is proof limited to mathematics? And to me, mathematics and logic are truly the same thing. I mean, there's no difference to me. It's just what can you establish as a true fact? How much, what do I need to do, or what evidence is present to establish something as true? To me, that's mathematics, that's proofing, that's logic. It's all of these physics. I mean, it's all of the same things. It's all at the same time. But to me, all proof, or I think in general, all proof is demonstrable. You don't say, right, like I said, we're doing a proof by logical exhaustion. But we're demonstrating it. I'm demonstrating the consistency of language through the specific solution, sensorality. And so it's just all of these different analytical aspects of it is what it is being the general form of all solutions, language already being consistent, words having meaning, and truly people understanding what that means. And then having irreducibility where you can't break down a word truly without it losing its empirical meaning. People have never even identified those properties, and I've been functionally analytical on those things for decades. And so the point being is you demonstrate proof. You don't convince somebody. It's empirically evident. And so as long as somebody's literally just not blurting out no, because people can lie, obviously, people can have deceit. So it's like a proof to me is just something where it's empirically undeniable. And so that's what we're building. We're building up all this physical intuition, linguistical derivation, the letters, and we're going to show the direct letters iterating, again, to a physical phenomenon and to a verbiage we already say that you can't deny. Which we've already done with speciality, which is just special with an ITY. It's every time someone says somebody else is special, the next operative word you're saying is they're differentiating. And that's what we're trying to find for sensorality. When you sense something, when you censor something, you block it, you bar it, you restrict it, and then there's a definitive operative word that gives us our definition, because words are defined based on their use with other words. So speciality is a subset of sensorality, right? Your desire to differentiate is a subset of all of the things that go into you being you. Sensorality with a C is a subset of speciality, logically inverse from saying sensorality is below speciality, sensorality is a subset of speciality, just working through the logic. Rhythm is kinetic, vibration is potential. Remember way back when I said we're going to replace potential energy, but we're going to demonstrate the iteration of these words, showing them that they're just different forms, a different level of specificity and generality and applicability. And so, all right, when you tense your muscles, right, that's kind of your potential energy, right? How much motion can this person produce? Your potential, right? Potential is well defined physically. Potential energy, no. Energy, by definition, is, again, not me saying this, as evident by the word's uses, independent of me, energy is the capacity to do work. So you don't have potential energy because energy is already the potential. And so, same reason you have one EV for electric potential. But again, potential is well defined. Potential energy is an oxymoron. It's a paradox. It's a false paradox. It's just something that makes no sense. And so But rhythm regulates or describes motion that's moving. Vibration is potential, things that aren't moving. How does vibration relate to potential? Right, if I'm sitting here and vibrating and I go, I move forward and backwards and I don't really change my position, right, how does that relate to my ability to do work, right? Motion, or again, a section of vibration could be perceived as motion, right? Because motion or vibration is something that doesn't move. It's cyclicity with no work. But if you just take one part of that cycle, right, we haven't returned to the same spatial coordinates, so it did work in that portion of vibration. But point being is, working through the logic, but vibration to potential, tension to potential, tension to vibration. How does tension relate to vibration? Vibration tends to rhythm. Vibration, like I'm trying to just vibration, sitting here, moving back, not moving in relation to other things, and then escapes, it moves, it tends to, I don't know, again, just working through the logic, but what is the relationship of tension and vibration? And I just think of a rubber band vibrating, or you kind of need tension to vibrate. You need to have some sort of discrepancy. What is tension then? Tension is tight, tension is coiled. Tension in a spring, tension is taut, T-A-U-T. And so I just think of a guitar string or a rubber band, and you pluck it and it produces a sound. And so but vibration requires tension. Tension, tendency. Sensorality is tendensality. And so now I wanted to point out, right, tendency, and we're preserving with that C, that's the softer sound with the C, as opposed to the K sound that you can get in English, right? Tendency, tendensality. Cality, sality, sensorality, tendensality. Ensality, ensorality. So now again, we're just working through, and I'm showing you all of these logical steps to break down this word sensorality. And so that is where I finished up. Again, it's some sort of this fundamental iteration of this S and the C sound, which is very apparent in a lot of different languages, represented by the Roman alphabet. But like I said, obviously not at the final answer. Continuing on. Yep, and that's about what I have for logical derivation today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.